Have you ever noticed that just when you're ready to step into something God has called you to do, something seems to always try and stop you? The kids need you. Work becomes overwhelming. Someone gets sick. Your schedule fills up. Your energy somehow disappears. And before you know it, days, weeks, or even months have passed. And the thing God has placed in your heart is still sitting on that shelf. But can I offer you a different perspective? Maybe the greatest attack against your calling isn't always fear. Maybe it's in the fulfilling of too many obligations. Because if the enemy can keep you emotionally drained, physically depleted, and mentally overwhelmed, constantly pouring into everyone else, he does not have to convince you to quit. Eventually, you will stop showing up on your own. You will convince yourself that you will write the book next year. You will start the podcast when life slows down. You will launch the business after the kids get bigger. You will finally share your testimony when you feel more confident. But what if confidence isn't what God is waiting on? What if He's inviting you to become a better steward of the life He's already given you? Before God ever expands your platform, He often wants to expand your capacity. Your calling requires your yes, but it also requires your boundaries, because every yes to God should come with the wisdom about what you also need to say no to. Proverbs 4 and 23 tells us that above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Healthy boundaries aren't selfish, but rather they are your spiritual responsibility to protect your peace, preserve your purpose, and help you lead from a place of wholeness instead of exhaustion. And that's why today's conversation is so important. In this episode, we'll discuss how to exercise your authority by setting healthy boundaries that honor and protect your capacity. Welcome to The Balancing Act, a podcast created for busy moms who were born to speak but feel like their goals are out of reach. In this series, my assignment is to restore your hope by helping you close the gap between the revelation God gave you and the manifestation you desire to see by becoming a woman who understands her authority. And if you haven't already, please click the button to subscribe so you never miss a show. I'm Sierra Hilaire, your self-care strategist, speaker, and author. I am also a wife to my husband, Lionel, of 21 years, a mother to our 4 amazing children, and a grandmother to beautiful baby boys, 2 of them, by the way. And I believe that my life's mission is to activate women to be authentic, balanced, and free to relentlessly pursue their purpose through practical strategies, solutions, and support. So maybe you are called to write the book, to start the podcast, launch the ministry, build the business, or even speak on stages. Whatever your assignment is, my prayer is that every episode helps you close that gap between the revelation and the responsibilities that you currently carry. Not by doing more, but by becoming a woman who can carry them better. For years, I believed that being a good wife meant putting everyone else first, that being a good mom meant always saying yes to their request. Being a good leader meant carrying everyone else's burdens, and that being a woman of faith required me to sacrifice my health and happiness in the name of hope. I thought that's what obedience looked like. But over time, I discovered something that changed my life. Many of us, including myself, are sacrificing things that the scriptures never asked us to. We're sacrificing our peace, our health, our joy, our rest, our relationships, and even our relationship with God. Not because He is requiring it, but because we never learned how to establish healthy boundaries. And I know someone listening today needs to hear this. Your purpose should cost you something. It will require your faith, it will require discipline, obedience, growth, stretching, but your purpose should never cost you your peace and sanity. It should never cost you your health or your family. And most importantly, it should never cost you time and intimacy with God. But somewhere along the line, we've confused burnout with faithfulness. We've worn exhaustion like a badge of honor. We've even celebrated being busy instead of being fruitful. And Jesus never modeled this behavior. But what he did do is withdraw and prioritize his prayer life. He rested even when storms were blowing and tossing the boat to and from. And I know sometimes in our personal lives, we can feel like there are so many storms and fires that we need to put out. But even in that, Jesus still learned and knew how to rest. He said no. Matter of fact, he didn't even heal everyone. He did not even meet every need. He did not make himself available all the time. Why? Because even him, the Son of God, understood this principle. And if he honored his capacity, why don't we think we shouldn't? Exercising your authority isn't just about speaking to the mountain. Yes, we know that there is power in our words, that life and death is in the tongue, but exercising our authority is more than just speaking. It's about protecting what God has trusted to you. It's learning how to say yes with wisdom and how to say no without feeling guilty. It's recognizing that your time, your energy, your emotions, your body, and your attention are resources entrusted to you by God. The question isn't whether or not you have authority, because we know as a daughter of the Most High God, you do. The question is, are you exercising it effectively? And one of the greatest ways that we can do that is by establishing healthy boundaries. So, what exactly is a boundary? A boundary is a commitment to how you will respond in order to protect your physical, emotional, social, spiritual, and financial well being. Notice I did not say that it is about controlling someone else, because boundaries aren't about changing other people. They're about understanding yourself and honoring that. For example, when you tell somebody, don't yell at me, that's an attempt to control another person's behavior. But when you say, if you continue yelling, I'm going to step away from this conversation until we can talk respectfully, that is a boundary. You see the difference? One is about controlling someone else, And the other is about taking responsibility for your own actions. That's true authority. It's not loud, it's not controlling, manipulative, but it's knowing who God created you to be and making decisions that align with that identity. But unfortunately, many women struggle with boundaries, and it's not because they don't love people or themselves, but because somewhere along the way they've learned that love meant overextending themselves. They've learned that saying no meant disappointing people, that asking help meant you were weak, that resting was a form of laziness, and that putting themselves first was selfishness. But I want to challenge that today, because sometimes what we call selflessness is actually fear hiding behind a mask, wearing a smile. The fear of rejection, the fear of confrontation, the fear of disappointing people, and the fear of not believing you are enough. And until we deal with the root, we'll keep repeating the same cycles. Because remember, in Proverbs, everything flows from the condition of your heart, which means if you don't guard your heart, eventually you will lose sight of your why, which is the very thing we're fighting for. So, what is your why? Why do you want to speak? Why do you want to impact lives? Why do you want to fulfill your God given assignment and purpose? Why do you want to follow Jesus? And when we start being honest about that question, things will begin to make sense and fall into place for us. Now, I just want to shift for a moment, because I never want to teach you something I haven't had to learn myself first. So when our children were younger, I too struggled with setting boundaries in my own home. And looking back, it wasn't because I didn't know how to, but it was because of what I experienced growing up. Oftentimes, our home is the first ministry, and the Lord will use this time to teach us the lessons needed to learn how to exercise our authority effectively before we get out in the marketplace, before we get on stages, before we start the ministry. He will often use our home to teach us these same principles. And so some of you may know my story of becoming a mom at just 15 years old. And while most teenagers were worried about prom, basketball games, the skating ring, and what college they wanted to attend, I was learning how to raise a baby. My childhood looked very different. I was forced to grow up really fast. And because of that, I made an inner vow without even realizing it. And this is why we have to be mindful of the things that we say to ourselves about our situations. I told myself that my children would never have to carry the responsibilities that I carried. And I believe, with all of my heart that it came from a good place. I wanted them to just simply enjoy being kids. I wanted them to experience the childhood I didn't. But here's what I didn't realize: an unhealed wound was making those decisions for me. Y'all better write that one down. Do not allow unhealed wounds to make decisions for you. And so instead of teaching my children responsibilities, I carried what belonged to them. I did all the cleaning, the cooking. I managed everything. I made sure everyone was okay and never stopped to ask myself if I was okay. And slowly that wore me out. There's a scripture that says that in the last days that the enemy will wear out the saints. And being honest and just evaluating my life, being wore out can ultimately become a form of warfare if you are not aware of it. And I wasn't wore out because motherhood was hard. It was because I had taken on too many obligations out of my own fear and my own guilt. How many of us are carrying assignments that God never called us to carry? We're carrying everyone's emotions, expectations, problems, and then we wonder why we don't have the energy and the stamina to pursue our own purpose. And the truth is, every unnecessary burden you consume or carry consumes your capacity that could have been invested somewhere else. It consumes your time. It consumes your energy that you could have used to invest in something else. But thanks be unto God, because he started teaching me better and dealing with my heart. And he showed me that I wasn't actually helping my children. I was preventing them from developing, because responsibility develops maturity. When I refused to let them carry age appropriate things, I was not serving them well. And we have to learn that before we can lead a team, before we can build a team, we have to first start in our homes, learning the foundational basic principles of understanding how to help people develop in their own maturity by setting healthy boundaries. Because what I was doing was rescuing them. And in the process, I was hurting myself. That realization, though, helped me change. And so from there, I started delegating, asking for help, and challenging those thoughts that said, if you want something done right, do it yourself, because the devil is a whole liar. I stopped believing that everything depended on me. Was that uncomfortable? Absolutely. Did I feel guilty in the beginning? Because guilt often shows up when we begin breaking unhealthy cycles, unhealthy patterns. Because why break something that's always working, right? But the truth is, it doesn't work. And that's why we're exhausted. We're overwhelmed and we feel depleted, never getting to the thing God has called us to really do. Boundaries don't just teach people how to treat you, they teach people how to grow. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is allow people to care for what belongs to them. And that applies to everyone, our kids, our spouse, our friends, the people that we lead. Because the reality is you cannot pour from an empty cup that you refuse to refill. And I know we've heard it before, but I don't think we've always believed it. And so we keep pouring anyway. We keep saying yes. We keep overcommitting and we keep pushing through exhaustion because we've convinced ourselves that burnout is a part of obedience. But I want you to hear me. Burnout is not a spiritual gift. Exhaustion is not the evidence that you are walking in God's will. Sometimes it's evidence that you've ignored your human limitations. Think about it. If the enemy can't stop you, he'll try to drain you of your capacity. Because a woman who is emotionally and spiritually depleted struggles to hear God's voice clearly. And that keeps us in more confusion. A woman who is overwhelmed does not have much patience to even pursue the vision that God placed in her heart. A woman who is always saving everybody else rarely is going to have energy to invest in herself. And this is why self care matters. And I'm talking about biblical self care. It's recognizing that your body is the temple of the Lord, that your mind needs maintenance, that your emotional health matters, and that spiritual warfare is real.